Greetings and salutations. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Severe Takeaways here on the SevereMMA YouTube page. I am Spencer Kite, your friendly neighborhood Spencer man. He is the young king in London town, Mr. Harry Powell. We are here to discuss UFC 287, which took place on Saturday at the Kaseya Center in Miami, Florida, headlined by the middleweight championship rematch between Alex Pereira and Israel Adesanya. And we have a new familiar middleweight champion, as the last style bender went out and in the second round stopped Alex Pereira cold, got one back, shot him with 3 arrows while he lay sleeping on the ground, not 1, not 2, but 3, in a performance that I think will silence a lot of the questions, will silence some of the criticisms and the doubts of Adesanya, create some intrigue about a potential third fight, which in the moment, in the heat of it, felt like it was shot down a little bit by both Dana White and by the new familiar champion. Before we get to all of that stuff, Israel is the subject of your Severe Spotlight this week, a great piece that everybody should go and check out at SevereMMA.com. What were your thoughts on the performance of the new, former, familiar champion, the last style bender?
I mean, he was all right, wasn't he?
Not bad. Not bad. Not bad at all.
So I think one of the things that was glaringly obvious as we moved through fight week, we got to the fight itself. Israel, and I sort of said this in the opening stanza of the piece, Israel wants to be player number one in his game. He wants to be able to manifest things. He wants to be able to be in a position where he can accept himself and thus people can accept him. And I think some of the way when he creates this effervescent nature to his character, he leans into the anime sides of things. He leans into the sort of quotable things that he says. He leans into the prophecies that he makes about certain fights or certain positions in his career. That speaks to me. And, you know, he said it himself that he wants to be player number one. And he has these sort of ruminations and these dreams and these thought experiments as he moves through his camp and through his fight career about where he's going to go, who he's going to be, what he's going to do. It feels to me, and it felt to me in the fight, that Israel Adesanya is the best when he's chasing something. And we'll get to this eventually, and I'll sort of pose this as the end question. But the question I have around Israel is when he wins the title, I wonder whether when he goes back to the locker room and he's with himself and he's with his coaches, I wonder if there's an air of the Chris Weidman where, you know, when Weidman wins the title and he goes back and he's had a shower and it's strapped around his waist and he's like, well, what now then? You know, like I wonder whether Israel, because he feels like his life is building to something. It wants to build to something. It's moving towards something. And when he wins that title and wins it in such devastating fashion, and we'll get to the nuts and bolts of it, but I wanted to get your opinion on this first. It's like I don't mean to, I'm gonna use the pun because he was wearing the collar and whatever, but he was like a dog with a bone. Like from moment one, he demanded dominance from himself. He bound into the middle of the cage. The footwork was on point. The fake game was on point. He sat on his shots. He forced Alex Pereira to respect the power. He made Alex Pereira bite on all the feints. He set up the myriad of different shots. He did not, for the life of him, I think there was 3 times, he managed, Alex Pereira managed to force Israel Adesanya behind the tram lines. Twice, Izzy did a fantastic job of getting away from it. The 3rd time, he took a couple of shots, fine. And then the 4th time, he puts him away. Grand, no problem. But what do you think on he's best when he's chasing something?
So, a couple things first. The collar is a nod to Jet Li Unleashed, film from several years ago, known in France as Danny the Dog. To the other part, I think this one, so I can't speak to the first time, right? I can't speak to winning the interim title against Kelvin Gastelum that he looked at as I am the champion, because he often refers to the first fight with Rob Whittaker as I defended my title for the first time. This one, in speaking to him last week, was more about getting the win, getting the victory back, getting one on Pereira, as he said to me, putting his head on my mantle. He's got mine up there. Now I get his, and I get to every so often be like, yeah, I got that one. His exact words were, fuck the belt. Now, of course, the belt, once we've gotten through with the whole, vengeance, it is delicious. And we sit down and Tim Simpson says, hey man, we're the champ again. Being the champ comes with stuff. And I'm sure there is a little bit of satisfaction to it, but I don't think it's the way it was for Weidman. It's similar. I remember years ago when Chael was getting ready to challenge for one of the many title shots that he got. I asked him about, like, this has been the thing that you're always after, You said your career will be incomplete. You will be a loser if you never win, whatever. What happens Sunday morning? You wake up and you're whether it was the middleweight or the light heavyweight champion of the world. He's like, I don't know. And he talked about this former wrestler, that the pursuit was always the world championship. And then he got there and all of a sudden the goal's gone. And I don't have this next goal. I don't think Israel is motivated in that way per se of gold. I think he creates the thing I have always loved. And you mentioned it. I use it every time I talk about him or with him. The player one thing is that it really is video games, right? It really is that idea of mastery of that game you're playing. You play games, I play games on occasion, used to much more when I was younger. It really is about, okay, now I'm going to go on this side quest to light heavyweight because I've already beaten the main level at this difficulty. Now I'm going to up the level and I'm going to try to do it a second time, right? Marvin Vettori twice, Robert Whittaker twice. And now I'm going to face this guy that beat me. And I had to go back to the checkpoint and I had to reset. But I like that challenge of, okay, I was in there and I learned and I see where I made that mistake. And you just telling me, you just like the strategy guide. My age, you had to buy them on books. Now they're all on YouTube. You just the strategy guide, right? Hey, this is the thing we messed up. This is where we lost it. You heard them all week. Focus. As they're in the prep point, Eugene gives them this one. Hey, as they're exiting in between the first round, before Eugene can even say it to him, Izzy looks over and says, focus. I know, focus. I think that's what it is more so than the championship thing. And I think, to me, that's the better mindset, because the goal thing, and I've talked to lots of athletes over the years that echo this, right? If I set that goal and I reach it, then you get to that Weidman point of, okay, now what? And all of a sudden, this thing you've been after, you've got it. Nothing's really changed. You're still the same dude. Everything's still the same. What becomes the push? But when it's, I want to beat this level, and then that's going to unlock another level. And now I've got this guy that beat me on a side quest saying, hey, I'm in the process of coming back to you. I think those are the pieces that motivate him more so than the championship itself. Of course, as I said, the title brings many great things. The money goes up, the profile goes up, the opportunities outside of the cage certainly go up. But I think more than anything, he is a mission-oriented as opposed to individual goal, because once you reach that goal, then what?
Well, this is the thing, and this is where I wonder what, and I don't want to do this immediately, right? Because we have to talk about the actual fight, but I wonder what happens for Israel next, because he tweeted out today or yesterday or whatever, something along the lines of, I'm just getting started. You guys below me really are fucked. Like, you don't even know what's coming, whatever. And like, the mindset of chasing greatness is certainly a more evergreen one, right? Because like you say, if your goal is the title or you reach the title and then it's like, cool, it's actually even harder to keep this thing. But if the motivation and the goal setting and everything that you've attuned your life to be has been achieved, getting up and changing that goal and reinvigorating your life is something really, really different. I was listening to Corey Sandhagen talk, I can't remember to who, but about his mindset change. And he said that for the Cheeto fight and for the
Song
Yadong fight, he went in and he tried to make himself angry, tried to make himself feel like this dude's taking something from me. I must go in there. I must try to hurt this man. I must try to X, Y, Z, whatever. And then he said he realized that he was consuming himself with that. And it was too all-encompassing and it was too overwhelming. And it took him too long outside of camp to come back down from that. And instead, he's been preaching the mindfulness thing of going in and being like, sure, look, we're in a fight and I'm just going to take the opportunities that come to me in this fight and I'm going to do flow state type things and whatever. And I feel like that is equally a more evergreen notion for this fighting thing. But before we jump into the actual fighting things themselves, I will be very interested to see what happens in the next performance for Israel, because you and I have said before, and I mean we've all said that when Israel is pushed, that's when the guy comes out, right? That's when the bit between the teeth comes out and the this and the that, and that's why I make the presumption I make of he is most dangerous as a fighter when he's chasing something, is because then there's something to gain, right? There's something ahead of him that isn't necessarily there right now. Now, whether that's the belt, whether that's greatness, whether that's that somebody's taken a couple of rounds from him and he needs to put the foot on the gas and whatever. But I do wonder whether there is some part of Israel that as he's getting on in his MMA career, right? And this is the other thing. How many fights has he had? Like 17, something like that, 18, something. It's something very, it's a nominal number that we expect a guy of that level to start really getting into who he is as a fighter, how he wants to fight, all of this.
26 MMA belts.
Okay, cool. So much more than that. But I wonder whether we're getting to a point where Israel is working out, similar to Corey Sandhagen, what the necessary things are for him to be able to go out and from second one, take all of the dominance and say, no, this is mine.
Yeah. Even if it is, as it was on Saturday, where you can look at the first round and it was a very close round. How you score it is subjective as always. This wasn't one of those rounds where it's clearly one guy's, but at the absolute least, he is in there and in the thick of it from Jump Street. There's no backing down. There's no, it's right away, as you say, in the spotlight. It's forward progress. It is pressure straight out of the gate of, nah, man, I'm taking this to you. I'm coming to get this and you're going to fire back. And I accept that there's almost a level of acceptance at times with Izzy when he's at his absolute best, where he just says, I'm going to have to go through it. The only way I get, and to what you're saying, perhaps the only way he gets the best out of himself is when he has to actually go through it. Whether he can manufacture that now as a function of, well, if I put myself in it, then it brings it out of me. And then I have these spectacular performances. Maybe that's a thing that's been unlocked here. Well, as you said, we'll see in the next one. But it was unlocked for Saturday because he walked out and was just like, I need that belt back, sir. I'm gonna have to get that belt. and I'm gonna have to even this up in MMA at least. I can't go back and get kickboxing back, but I could set it aside, and I got to even this MMA score. And he did in just spectacular fashion.
Yeah, like from moment zero, he was not willing to concede any space. He was not willing to concede feint battles. He was not willing to concede footwork battles. He was not willing to concede low kick battles. He wasn't willing to concede anything. And what he did so well is, I think there were a couple of things that worked really well for him. He set his stall out that the orthodox stance was going to be his movement stance, in that if he needed to get back to the center, or he needed to circle off, or he needed to whatever, he was going to do that in orthodox. If he was going to need to throw shots, that was coming from southpaw. And why was it coming from southpaw? It was coming from southpaw because he could monitor the lead hand of Alex Pereira, and it meant that he could throw the, it's not throw, maybe this is the wrong word, but he has that leg drag feint. And what I mean by that is he sort of
pulls his leg along the canvas.
Yeah, he deadens his own leg, and sort of he rolls the inside knuckle of his big toe across the canvas to be like, what's this one going to be?
Right.
Almost as if he's lugging a ball and chain along the floor, right?
Right.
And if you asked him that, I bet you there would be some part in his brain that that's what he's visualizing, that he's turning his leg into this mace that he's going to launch at a fella, right?
Right.
And so beautifully did he oscillate between a variety of different attacks off that leg. If it's inside low kick, outside low kick, body kick, teep, or the question mark kick, or just a roundhouse kick up top, it all came from the same feint beginning. And that setup proved money throughout the fight. Something that I was so impressed with in this one was he didn't hand fight as much as he did last time,
right,
because the footwork was so on point.
Right.
But what he did do is whenever he threw with intention. Everything that landed on Pereira had to think about. There was no chuck a jab out there just to chuck a jab out there, just to get a point on the board or whatever. I am sitting in space, and I've dropped this jab on your chin, and the right hand is coming, and I'm well aware of what's coming back, and I will counter accordingly.
Every movement was purposeful. And you saw, as we even got into the second round, and we saw it even in the first, but to me, it stood out in the second. Pereira is biting on everything. And we talk about it regularly. I talk about it with the coaches when I do coach conversations and just speak to people that are tied to this sport more so than me, that know the mechanics of it more than me. If you get even that quarter beat, you get even that little, every time you move your hand, he has to do this one to wonder where it's coming from. You've won that interaction. And that sets up the next interaction and sets up down the road and down the road and down the road. And it was beautiful on Saturday. It really, truly was. And that's not to take anything from Alex Pereira, who fought very well and was right there through the first. And I guarantee you, if you went to Alex Pereira today and were like, hey man, walk me through that last sequence, he felt like, I've got him where I want him. This is the spot this is where I had him last time. I'm getting off my shots. I like that he changed up his targets. I like that he changed up his weapons. And Izzy just did well to cover, to roll, to move, and to fire back. This was a great fight. Like, as we're sitting here talking about it, I'm getting more interested in seeing a third fight instantly than I was even Saturday night. I can argue the case for it. I don't want it. I want the anticipation. Give me a year removed. But I do think I want to see it again at some point.
So I wouldn't mind seeing it again. But in the same vein that we talked about Valentina Shevchenko and Amanda Nunes eventually coming together,
right.
What I wanted to see was Valentina go out, smoke some lady, Amanda go out, smoke some lady, and then the anticipation of two fighters with fresh air behind them. You bring that together, and that's how you do it. Now, personally, I don't want to see it again, because what it will mean is that in some form, Alex Pereira will have to cut to middleweight again. And I don't ever want to see that again. Having seen the numbers that he gets to outside of camp, and then seeing what he makes at 185, I don't ever want to see a fighter have to go through that again. I feel like Alex has done enough now that if he jumped up at 205, he is in a very strong fight, a very big fight very quickly. And it wouldn't shock me if we found him knocking on the door of Jamal Hill pretty.
I assume you're going to have a name here at some point.
I will do.
Okay.
Just to harp on a couple of things on the actual technicalities that I was impressed with too.
Okay.
I actually think Israel baited Pereira for that finish.
100%.
And I think he baited him because the feints were landing, and the feints were forcing Pereira to bite. I shouldn't say landing, because he didn't actually land anything, right? And the variety of shots was ticking up from Adesanya. And I think Israel understood that if it continued in that way, it was going to be a point fight. And maybe he wins it. Maybe Alex makes some adjustments. But he realized that Alex was getting frustrated. And he was getting frustrated because he was barreling through certain positions, through ranges, and forcing Israel into situations where Israel was up against the cage or whatever. But he was looking to land big power to gain some form of respect or, whatever it is back. And Israel was like, cool, I can use this. And there was an exchange, I think 2 beats ago, where Alex pushes Izzy up against the cage. Izzy manages to throw a really nice left body kick. Alex comes in with his own shot. Izzy moves, lands 2 shots to the body and an uppercut, and circles off. And he's like, okay, if I can just get this guy if I can force him to think he's got me, I'm going to be able to see through this, and I'm going to be able to land my shot. And when the knee came, Israel saw the knee from the corner of his left eye. He ducks his head as the knee comes. Now, the knee lands, right? And I don't think Izzy wanted the knee to land, but the knee lands, and Izzy was like, this is my chance. Because he's curled his entire body. The core rotation has started. The generation of power as Izzy ducked down into that reaction was large. And as he came back up and over, we know that he has a freak ability when he's standing up straight to generate power when he's turning. We saw it against Rob Whittaker, where he was up really straight, leant back, still managed to catch the core rotation to put Rob away. And that first right hand that lands on Alex Pereira is sweet as a nut. Alex doesn't see it coming. And we all know those are the shots that hurt you, are the ones you don't see coming. And by the time Alex's head has managed to wobble around the universe a couple of times and come back to straight, there's a baseball bat right hand landed straight in his temple, and we're done here. Like that awareness and that level of risk taking from Israel to be like, I'm going to let one of the biggest power punchers in this division, if not the entire division, put me up against the fence, the same place I got finished last time.
I'm going to let him come into his wheelhouse.
And I'm going to destroy him here. That's a big set of balls. That's a big old set of balls,
It's the set that he posted for Alex on Friday after the weigh-ins. Kirby with the 2. Yeah.
It's wild.
As I said earlier, I think it is the performance that will be the reminder, that will be the silencer in some ways. I know we got into a conversation and I got, emotional and fired up in talking about it on the preview show. In part because Ian and Sean both want to see these performances. I think you and I have a different position in terms of the what Izzy has done previous to these 2 fights. And I think that I have a different thought process when it comes to the ability to just command that, 5th round against Gastelum, instantly flip the switch, turn it up kind of effort from somebody. But I think we saw from the outset of this fight that Izzy was in that zone that Ian and Sean want to see him in all the time. And I hope, as we said, that this becomes he's figured out now that I need to be in that zone to deliver these kinds of performances that I know I'm capable of and want to have, instead of just playing with my food and being significantly better than the Jared Cannoniers and Marvin Vittoris of the world. But I also hope that on the other side of that, the people that have been disappointed and the people that have said, yeah, well, it hasn't been enough, I want to see more, can now give him that grace and the space of, okay, well, we saw more in the moment where the doubt was highest. We saw the thing at the time when all of us said, is this dude just the boogeyman? Is this guy just kryptonite? And he was like, no, we're good. Superman's okay. Away I go. Keep flying around this planet.
Because I think if we steel man the premise of what Ian and Sean are saying, we all agree, right? When you can go out and put performances like that against the scariest dude in the division, now that Romero is no longer in the division, the scariest striking prospect in that division, for you to go out and take the fight away from him. Now, I just want to say this one thing too. I would say that was like Israel at 55% and Alex Pereira at 45%, right? If we were to chop up 100% of the fight, that's kind of how it went. Right. It was just that Israel.
Thank you for clarifying that, because I was like, what do you mean that was Israel at 55%?
It was just that Israel was just 5% better on the night.
Right.
Because the levels are so close, that was enough. And it was enough that 5% was such a wide margin on the night, right? Or 10%.
Yeah. 5%. You and I, in having a chat yesterday, just catching up in general of the weekend, you had mentioned you had spoke to a friend and kind of as you were talking about the fight, the two of you posited if these guys fought 100 times, it would be 50-50. And I think that's true. I think these are two men where it's coming down to fine moments, how each person is feeling or locked in on that particular evening, and those little half beat, quarter beat. It's not even mistakes. It's forcing the other guy into those quarter beats. And that's what we saw Saturday. There's no part of me that thinks, oh, Israel wins from here on out. These two are forever linked, forever ultra competitive. And if and when we get a third one in the octagon, it will be every bit as close, tantalizing, exciting as this one was.
Yeah, and I think just on the performance point, if we just end here, and we could do picks and whatever, but when this is the thing that I understand the frustration. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I understand the frustration that if you can go out and look as good as he has here, then why not aim for that level every fight out? Because whether us as analysts, us as fans, us as media members, we understand that at the end of the day, when that big shiny gold belt is wrapped around your waist and everything that comes with it, Tyron Woodley was right. You fight however you need to fight to keep that big shiny gold belt. In the same vein, Shawnee and I have spoken about this on Speakers Corners before. We've spoken about it on the Sheehan show over on Sherdog. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. But you also have to understand that there are repercussions because fans want to and have an expectation of a certain level of performance, specifically when that performance has been shown by you
100%.
Insane, gargantuan, universal cracking level. We don't need to see that, but the fans want to see that. And I think everyone wants to see that. I watched that fight and I was like, I don't give a shit what I watch now. That is the spotlight. You can't perform that well against a guy that good, and I'm just going to pick X fighter. You just can't. And I would love if, as I posited earlier, if Israel had managed to level up, unlock the trait, unlock whatever it is in that game where he can channel himself into a specific mindset, into a specific rhythm, and we get performances like that for whoever he stands in front of for the rest of his career.
It will be interesting to see if that focus keyword remains the keyword throughout. If that, I know Izzy likes to make each fight into a bit of a story, into a bit of a, this is the overarching theme, right? It was Saw the first fight, it was Unleashed for this one. I want to see if he can maintain that Unleashed going forward. We said we'll get into some ideas of next, because as much as we both agree or think it will happen at some point potentially, let's not do it right now. Let's not hustle back into it. You have said you would like to see Alex Pereira go up to 205. Dana White said the same thing on Saturday night. As you look at the light heavyweight division, who do you stick him in against?
I mean, I have two names.
Okay, let's hear them.
The first name is really unnecessarily mean. The other name,
the first name is, okay, when you say it's really unnecessarily mean, to me, that makes me lean Nikita Krylov.
It's Anthony Smith.
Okay.
Because he goes in there and he batters Anthony Smith from pillar to post. Like,
I mean, let's let Anthony Smith fight in whatever it is, a couple of weeks here against Johnny Walker and see if he could get through that one.
I mean, Johnny Walker would be fun. Let's do the winner of that. Let's do the winner of that. That's
all right.
Not necessarily mean.
There we go.
The other one is you chuck him in with our boy
Magomed Ankalaev.
Yeah.
And you say, okay, wrestle.
You say, okay.
Defend.
Let's see, big man. Let's see.
Yeah, I would be okay with either of those. I wouldn't hate being the guy that welcomes Alexander Rakic back to the octagon, just as a big fellas throwing some power. I wouldn't mind the perennial Volkan Ozdemir measuring stick, litmus test, whatever you want to call it. And I wouldn't actually mind Nikita Krylov, who has looked good for all of his, faults and flaws. I know he's not a guy you're particularly aware of, or particularly fond of, I should say. If we stay at middleweight, this is where it gets a little challenging. This is where it gets a little uncertain. What's next for the last stylebender?
Well, I'll go slightly left field. Jan Blachowicz said he'd return the favor to Izzy and come down to middleweight. I'd watch that.
Yeah, same.
I'd watch that.
Does he need a win? He's coming off a draw. It's a loss before that. So his last win is beating Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Does he need one more?
Nah, because the way that you can...
it's middleweight.
One, it's middleweight, and two, you can sell it that this is Izzy's second round tour, right? He's gone through and he's lapped everyone once. Well, now he's got the win over Bahia. He can put that one to bed, and then he can turn around now and be like, well, the only one left is Big Jan. So
Big ol' Yannick.
Let me get that one back, because who else have we got? You know what I mean? Like,
this is the trouble.
Streaking. There's nobody else streaking. Rob can tweet all he wants saying, great performance, Israel. See you soon. Where are you going to see him, big man? McDonald's? Because you're not seeing him in the cage. Like, it's not happening. Like,
who's traveling to whose hometown?
Yeah, like, it's just, what are we doing? Thanksgiving together? Like, what's the story? Because there's no way. There's no way.
Yeah, I don't this scenario is the reason I was excited about Marvin Vettori, Roman Dolidze, from the potential of Roman Dolidze becoming a thing, and why when we sat down here after that fight, I was like, man, I really wish. And it was a close fight. It was a competitive fight, but like the only ascending name in the division right now that Israel Adesanya hasn't gone through at least once, if not twice, is Dricus du Plessis. And I don't think he is at a point yet of we can give this. I know that he's 5-0 in the UFC, but like, I need that man to beat a Jared Cannonier or a Marvin Vettori before he gets that look. I know he has done it consistently, but I need to see for real that this is just the way I breathe. is actually just the way he breathes, and he's able to do DDP things in round 3, 4, or 5 against a Cannonier or a Vettori. And so, listen, you made the case. It might be Jan Blachowicz. I'd be in for that.
Because there's a big jump between the two divisions in terms of size and stuff.
Absolutely.
But in the same vein, it feels like it might as well be one division, you know? Like, it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing.
Yeah, if we made it 195, it would be great.
Right. And that's
like if we just made the cruiserweight division and got rid of these two, amalgamated them, be lovely.
Right. And don't get me wrong, that's fair on there's not fair on the 205 guys that have got to cut the weight and whatever. Get that. And equally, you know, you're going to have size issues and whatever. But
for sure.
Yeah, both of them are relatively poor divisions. And I think one of the things that we were so interested about is Pereira comes in, storms his way to the title, wins the title, and you're like, ooh. Because if he goes around and he decides and he manages to beat Pereira on Saturday, well, that whole list of contenders can line right back up because we got a new guy, you know? Now, obviously that didn't happen and whatever. But yeah, I think
it feels like at every turn, middleweight just gets right back to where it is stuck in the circle of the snake will eat itself.
Yeah.
We move forward to the co-main event. Gilbert Burns defeats Jorge Masvidal by unanimous decision. Masvidal hangs up the gloves, says, "Good night, God bless," in his hometown in the 305. It went the way we expected it to go. It went exactly the way we expected it to go. This is Gilbert Burns being a little younger, not much. And I think we missed that point a little bit in the preview show in talking about Masvidal's age, but he's much younger in terms of miles. And I think that was a big part of what showed on Saturday. He's also the better athlete. He's the more well-rounded fighter, able to go out and dominate. And so there's not a lot to take away in terms of performance because it went the way we expected it to. So I will go here. What are your lasting thoughts, memories, takeaways of Jorge Masvidal?
So I'll say off the bat that I was disappointed with Burns, and we'll get to that afterwards. Maybe disappointed is a bit harsh, but what are my thoughts of Jorge Masvidal? An incredible overachiever. You know, Dana said in the post-fight press conference that knee changed his life, and he's right. He's right.
Yep.
But Jorge's ability to ride that wave and his ability to maximize, the only thing he failed on was getting the Conor McGregor fight, right? He absolutely nailed everything else. 2 title shots, 1 short notice. He goes out, he creates this massive name for himself. All of the plaudits that come in, all of the stuff that's obviously happened outside of the cage that generates him revenue and stardom and all of these things. He just nailed it, like absolutely nailed it. And he was one of those guys where he's your Neil Magny type fighter, where he's a very good fighter. Never should have got a title shot, really. Like, not really the elite of the elite, but very hard-nosed, great chin, good boxing, good anti-wrestling, great submission defense, and knew how to fight, right? Had a meanness about him, had a violence about him, had a way of talking, had a charisma. And he found the wave and he fucking nailed it. And so if there are fighters, and somebody talked about this with pro wrestling, and I don't want to get too deep into the pro wrestling thing because you'll have me ranting about the WWE UFC thing, but like somebody said, right, about Batista, that when you watch Batista as a character on WWE, he's just kind of a bit underwhelming in his acting ability and whatever. Now, I don't know if that's true. I don't watch that shit. But there is a notion in MMA that when you pick your character and you see your moment, you have to capitalize on it because that's the make or break, right? If you nail it and you build your stock and you do the whole thing, amazing. You've elevated your stock to this new level. Jorge showed fighters that Whether you think Jorge's character was a character or whether you think that was just who he was as a person, maybe even elevated half a notch or whatever, the time will come and you have to be able to be ready to take that chance. And Jorge took it with both hands, ran to the end zone and chucked that ball down.
For the longest time, he was, sort of a hardcore darling, right? He was a critical darling. He was that actor that is in the indie films that people that are cinephiles go, hey, that guy, he's John Hawkes, he's Walton Goggins, he's that supporting actor that shines every time you get him in there. And even if he doesn't lead the film, right? I go back to the Strikeforce title fight against Gilbert Melendez. He loses that fight, but going in, people are like, really, this guy title fight? And he makes Gil work. And it's a good competitive fight. And you go, okay, this guy's all right. Yeah. I see this guy. And then he comes to the UFC and it's a bunch of close competitive split decisions and he's frustrated and he's pissed off and he doesn't understand and he's mad and it finally switches for him and he lets out a little bit more of the personality after Lorenz Larkin and he starts going on a bit of a run. And if you go back, he actually started with the whole grabbing some of the Trumpiness of make welterweight great again. Can't remember what the fight was, but going into the Cowboy fight. That was his thing that he kept saying was, I'm going to make welterweight great again. People think this guy is returned because he's come down here and all of a sudden he's contender again. I'm going to show people. And he did in brutal fashion. You mentioned that, and I think you're 100% right, that the knee more than anything. So 3-piece in a soda carried him into the light with a lot of people. The knee thrust him into the mainstream spotlight. But the same way that knee carried him into the mainstream spotlight, that knockout loss to Kamaru Usman in the second fight, after all the talk, after he's got, and this isn't a knock on Masvidal at all, said all the right things, right? He plays these things so well. Has the short notice fight filling in for Gilbert Burns and says, look, I went the distance with him. I had 8 days notice. I cut weight on the plane to the Middle East. Like, what do you want me to do? Give me a full camp and I'll get this guy. And then he's the one that gets baptized. The same way that knee carried him to here, that knockout took him back down here. And since then, it's just been hard. It's been a combination of, the tough matchup against Colby. You lose a little bit of the steam of this guy selling fights, this guy saying the things because the performance isn't backing it up. But I mean, overachiever is the best way to describe it. And that's not a knock on who he should have been or was. It's actually, to me, the greatest praise you can heap on somebody is that this guy took every single ounce of his talent and just wrung every last drop out of it and maxed it out. And as he said on Saturday, I am set for life.
That's exactly what MMA should be.
100%.
Right? It's a shame that it's come in a way that it has in the knockout loss and everything. And he spoke about the knockout loss. I think this was on Joe Rogan. It was a clip or something. And Joe asked him, how did you deal with the knockout? And he said, what do you mean deal with it? Like, I'm still dealing with it. Like, I still haven't got over that loss.
Right.
And in his brain, his response was, one day I'm going to need to see that guy again. And one day I need to get that back. And that's Jorge being Jorge. That's never going to happen in a professional setting, right? Like, you're never going to, and let's be honest, I don't think Jorge cares that much that if he saw Kamaru Usman on the street, he'd start something. If Kamaru came down to AT&T and they were able to get some rounds together, maybe. But I
called it AT&T, and so I'm laughing that you referenced
AT&T.
it as a
there you go
as a cellular company,
mobile phone company. Right?
Yes,
that's actually what he works for now. Yeah.
So you said you weren't particularly impressed. With Gilbert Burns, you were a little bit disappointed.
Yeah.
Please tell me why.
Because the way to win the fight was to do what he did in the second round. And he fucked around for 5 minutes on the feet, being quite tentative, giving Masvidal a little bit more respect than maybe he deserved, given the difference in dynamism and athleticism that he had and showed in the second round. And then in the third round, he went after him a little bit more, landed some good shots, did some things, whatever. But like Gilbert, to me, and this could just be a bias thing, but he showed us so much in that Khamzat Chimaev fight, so much gas, so much willingness to go, so much ability to scramble and throw and still hit with big power and go the whole 9 yards. And I just, why not show me 80% of that and just run Jorge over? Like when we got to the second round, he was just dumping Jorge left, right, and center, grinding him, landing the ground and pound, doing good work. And just do that, bro. Like, just do that. Because Jorge was visibly tiring in the second, was visibly blowing. And then Burns was like, yeah, sure, get up in the third and we'll do more of the punching thing. I go, why? Like, he gets on the mic and he says, give me the title shot, give me this, give me that. Cool. You're going to need a far superior tactical display if you're going to think about dethroning Leon Edwards if you manage to get that shot. Now, obviously, Dana has done the Dana thing and shat on him from the greatest height, saying, I'll give him what he wants. He can be the backup fighter for that fight, right? Like, whether that's hyperbole or not, whatever. But, yeah, I mean, this is your chance. If I'm Gilbert Burns, right? You're in the 305. This is your chance. Go out and fucking truck this dude. That's exactly what I expected, because this is a gimme fight for Gilbert Burns. Jorge is a good grappler, but he's got more defensive grappling than he does offensive grappling. So you ain't worried about anything coming back, right? You ain't worried about big, massive one-hit knockout power. Jorge can crack, but you know what he's going to do, right? You've got so much fucking tape on this guy, and you also know you can take him down. You know you've got the athleticism, you know you've got the dynamism, and you know that you have the sort of style that will wear on a man like that to the point where opportunities will arise for your world-class submission skills. And he's like, here's 10 minutes of face punching. Why?
So you and I are in very much agreement that this was a go out, smash this dude in his backyard, then call your shot, then offer and now let me turn it over to Jorge Masvidal. I sat watching that performance and thought of Bilal Muhammad sitting in that audience as Gilbert Burns is saying, I'm not fighting anybody else. I'm next and I'm here. And I know Bilal is locked in on wanting a Colby fight. He was wearing a Colby Covington shirt, all these things. If I'm Bilal Muhammad, the minute he says that, I am sprinting into the media room and saying, you're going to give that dude a title fight, that guy gets to be next. So not only do I have the indignity of this dude got to be backup fighter after ducking me after not fighting for a year, I'm just going scorched earth. Because the last time we saw Bilal Muhammad, he ran through Sean Brady to push his unbeaten streak to 9. And so to be the guy that's standing there, that has done the work to merit an opportunity, has a history with the champion, and it seems like is trying to be guided into the here's Shavkat Rakhmonov lane, that's where you, if you're Bilal, you got to take that opportunity and go, okay, he fumbled. I'm scooping it up and going the other way. And I'm turning this on him, and I'm suddenly making this Gilbert Burns is my target. You want to be the number one guy? You want to be next in line? Let's go. You and me, let's solve this. Let's decide this. 5 rounds, you, me, couple of months. Let's go. That's what I want to see. That's my next.
So I don't think that's going to happen.
No, it's not. I think Bilal Muhammad is going to fight Shavkat Rakhmonov here in Vancouver at UFC 289. And I am going to watch the hell out of it and feel terrible if and when Bilal Muhammad loses. And I don't know that he's going to lose, but just from a this is a dude that's done enough. if that's how it plays out, I will feel very sad.
Yeah, I think I would like to do the switcheroo, if I'm honest. I would like Gilbert Burns to fight Shavkat Rakhmonov, and I would like Bilal
Here for
Muhammad
it.
to do. If I was in the driver's seat and you're like,
Yeah.
name that I've written, the name I've written for Gilbert Burns is Shavkat Rakhmonov. Because
I'm
it's
here
like,
for it.
okay, cool. You don't want to fight anyone. This is Dana 101. You don't want to fight anyone. Here's this dude.
Yeah, here's
Like,
the guy.
Right. Because Dana can turn around and be like, well, you don't want to fight anyone. Well, Bilal's got a win streak of 8. What have you got?
2
and then
wins.
He looks at his 2 hands and he's like, like, what are you going to, where's the argument?
Yep.
And again, if he'd have gone out, if he goes out and he trucks Jorge Masvidal, destroys him over 2
He
rounds.
can say, I've got 2 finishes in 4 months this year, and I went to war with the guy that you think is a beast. And
Right.
yeah, I lost, but I took that bastard on.
Right.
And before that, I was winning fights and fighting for titles. So I'm here.
Or you even turn around and you say to Bilal, tell me how many title contenders you've knocked off. How many? None. Get fucked. I'm next. Right? So look, there are so many ways that you can do that. There are so many ways that you can spin that. And I just feel like he fumbled the bag. The performance was fine. Like he was in any danger. But we're talking about breaking the cycle of Dana-ness, which is to, push Leon Edwards, Colby Covington, and now Kamaru Usman in through a cycle of each other. If you want to break that, you have to get him to do something about you. And that performance against Jorge Masvidal is not the way to do it.
Agreed. Move to bantamweight. Robert Spencer Font defeats Adrian Yanez. First round, TKO win, about 3 minutes in. This was a very interesting fight to me because pretty early on, I was like, uh-oh. Has my guy just hit that 35 in the 35-pound weight class, and the damage is piling up, and because Yanez lands a couple clean shots, and right away the eye starts to swell up and he's getting the mouse. And it's almost as if Rob Font was like, wait a minute. I'm Rob Font. I have this here jab. And I'm just going to see, as we talked about on the preview show, I'm just going to see if this kid can get past it. Just going to see if he can consistently work around it. Or can I stick it in his face enough that it creates those half beats we were talking about with Izzy and Pereira? And sure enough, it created the half beats. And Rob Font found some power shots, and then found Adrian Yanez's jaw, chin, head, all of those things, and put him away. But still an interesting fight. That a very good bounce back performance for Rob Font to get back into the win column, defeat a kid that's on the rise, that's on the ascent, that had won 5 straight in the UFC, but also one for me that not catches an asterisk, but is I'm gonna hold on to this one for next time, because the next matchup is going to be real important.
I think all props to Rob Font. We saw him. I agree with you. I think we saw him go through some shit in that fight, and he made a decision.
Yeah.
And the decision was, look, I don't even think it was necessarily the jab. I think it was just you know what? If this kid's going to beat me, if this kid's going to put me away, he's going to have to actually put me away. And so instead of skirting out and Yanez was just catching him as Rob was skirting out, or Rob was trying to circle and Yanez was catching him, Yanez was the far quicker fighter, the far more athletic fighter. Font was like, how about I just stand my ground and throw shots and see what fucking happens? And what happened is he manages to get Yanez out of there. Let me tell you, that was a 50-50 fight.
Yep.
That was a 50-50 fight with the momentum and the damage and the swings moving against Rob Font. And
Yep.
you saw, I think everything you needed to know about how that fight went was the interaction immediately after between Tyson Chartier and Rob Font. Font looks at him and he goes, "Whew." As in, like, that was a close one. Right? And
Yep.
Tyson Chartier leaps over and gives him a hug and does whatever. But Rob Font knows he was in the fight there. And if he hadn't found that right hand and he wasn't going to find that right hand, it was going to be a long old night. Because Adrian Yanez showed us in that performance, and this is the thing, I agree with the asterisk, because when you look on his topology in 7 months' time and you see lost to Rob Font, round 1, 3 minutes, you're going to be like, Jesus, that kid got blown out of there. No, sir. No, he did not. Adrian Yanez did things in that fight.
He got beat. He got beat by a more veteran guy. And this was, as we talked about, as you and I talk about all the time, as we talk about on the preview show every single week. That's the purpose of this fight. Let me find out where this kid stands against the guy that's been in there, that's done the 5 rounds thing, that has all the experience advantage, that is that clear level above. And on Saturday night, we found out that Adrian Yanez, if he's not at that level, he's about that far away. And you can close that distance. He's got some stuff he's got to continue to work on, but it looks like he's working on it with Eve Edwards down in Orlando. And just very well may close that gap. And so the next poor fella that's in there with him, going to catch a beating. And the Rob Font matchup next is super, super delicate.
Yes.
Is the way I will put it.
Yes, 100%. And the problem for Rob Font, right? And if we go Rob Font first, now there's not a lot of guys that aren't matched here, right? This is a difficult one. You don't want to do Cheeto immediately. Corey Sandhagen is obviously going to be looking upwards of the division. Sean O'Malley is looking upwards of the division. Who knows how it's going to play out with Aljo, Henry, Marab sort of positioning. And that leaves one man. And I don't think you want to do Petr Yan, Rob Font. I just don't think you want to do that, right? Now, if that's the only man left standing, in a way, I really like the storylines because Yan, again, it's like, dude, what are we doing? Are you going to win one? Are you going to do it? Are you going to get one back? And for Rob Font, it's okay, you took the young buck. You want to do the big leap again? This is the big leap again, right? It's just whether at 389 million years old, Rob Font wants to do all right, motherfuckers, I'm going to do this for one more shot. I would like to know and be very interested in your next conversation with Rob Font as to how he 6, 8, 12 weeks later digests that fight and digests the moment where he was like, I'm just going to see what happens here.
So I'm going to wait to reach out because we're recording this on Monday. So he's had all of 36 hours since the fight. I'm going to let him get home. I'm going to let him hang out with Kathy and with Emerald and the crew and have a little celebration back in Massachusetts. But we'll reach out and Rob Font will be on this platform here in the next, I would say 3 weeks. And we'll have that conversation. He was open, willing, ready to have the conversation that he and I had for the piece on UFC.com about the Cheeto fight. I would like to continue that with him about this fight because I think, as you said, it is a very, very interesting conversation to have. One of the things that he said when he and I were talking about Adrian Yanez, both on a conversation with and when I spoke to him again before that UFC.com piece, was of the names sort of in that young ascending group, he was the best one. He was the right matchup, the best matchup wise. Because there's another name that's going to get thrown at Rob Font very quickly. And it's Umar Nurmagomedov.
No. We're not doing that.
But I mean, that's the thing, right? That's the, and I don't want to call him a boogeyman because he's a 26-year-old that hasn't faced anybody in the top 10 yet. And so, but that's the one that's hanging out there, right? That all of these boxers, that all of these strikers are like, cool, I'll take Adrian Yanez because it's not Umar Nurmagomedov. Yeah. And like some poor bastard is going to get hit with, all right, cool. Here's Umar, right? We know that they tried to make Merab Dvalishvili versus Umar Nurmagomedov. Merab, who has won all of these fights and just beat Petr Yan, the former champion. They were like, cool, unbeaten 26-year-old. So somebody's going to get it. If I'm Rob Font, I am paying close attention to the next couple weekends to see how some stuff plays out, to see how Pedro Munoz and Chris Gutierrez plays out, to see how Song Yadong and Ricky Simone plays out. I'm putting out a little like, what's up, Dom Cruz? Just to see what Dom Cruz is up to, because that's what you want for Adrian Yanez. Fair. I'm asking Jonathan Martinez what he's up to. I'm maybe seeing if Cody Garbrandt wants to get one back. But I don't know that I'm real hurrying to Petr Yan or anybody else like that. It's going to be interesting. This division is amazing. It remains at the forefront. As I said, over these next couple of weeks, there's some big fights. And then obviously next month in New Jersey, we get Aljo and Henry Cejudo, who is a wrinkle back into this. Going to be fun. Going to be good times. You threw up that's the one. Adrian Yanez, Dominic Cruz.
Yeah, it's the one. It's the one because, look, if you're Yanez, you have to be very careful with what happens now.
Yes.
Right? You have to be very careful that you don't just do okay, you're 29. We need to make some inroads here, but we don't want to do okay, here's Petr Yan. Or okay.
Yeah, we don't want to do the crazy where suddenly we get 2 losses.
Right. So he's dropped the loss to Rob Font in a fight he looks really good in. Cool. Let's do here's a name that will, if Dom Cruz goes out and out wrestles Yanez and does the Dom Cruz thing, then we know Yanez's ceiling isn't what we thought it was.
Correct.
Right? At least there are vast holes that he needs to fix. Fine. However, for Yanez, he goes out against a older veteran guy on the sliding slope of his career, massive name, and that's a rebuild for you. You go in, you do that, you beat Dom Cruz, whether it's a decision, whether you finish him, whatever it is, and then you can get on the mic and be like, okay, it's been 3 months. All of this division has sort of played out. There's going to be a host of lads waiting around, and you can have your pick then. We can then start to do who's the next, where's the, what are you doing? How's this? What are we doing?
Get yourself back in a position to call your own shots, make your own fights as best as you can. Like, nobody gets to full on call their own shots, but yes, I agree. It's the Severe MMA takeaways here on the Severe MMA YouTube page. E. Spencer Kite, Harry Powell, UFC 287. Kevin Holland knocks out Santiago Ponzinibbio. I want to start by saying, Santiago Ponzinibbio, when you end up face down on the canvas and he then hits you with the follow-up coffin nail and you still don't respond, don't be getting up and being like, why are you stopping the fight? What do you do? You were asleep. He woke you up with that other one. It was a great stoppage. It was a perfect stoppage. And Kevin Holland, the most frustrating fighter on the roster to me, kind of remains the most frustrating fighter on the roster to me for all the good things. And listen, this is, to me, probably about 65-70% of these are the good things of Kevin Holland. There's still some bits. Looked like he had some trouble with his right hand, which was surgically repaired after the Wonderboy fight. So maybe he rushed back in and now it's jacked up again. We'll see. It's a very good win. I have to give it to him. It's a very good win. There are moments of this fight. There are elements of this fight that highlight those great potential pieces of Kevin Holland. But there are also bits where I'm still just like, God, would this guy just, as we said with Israel, focus. Just come out and do the good things. As you said with Gilbert Burns, just come out and do the good things. Why do we have to have all of these other not great things? They're just limiting you. Your thoughts, my good man.
He looked good,
This is why he's frustrating to me.
Yeah. Like we talked on the preview show about the potential reasons for the inner monologue and the everything and the stuff and the whatever. And I won't rehash those thoughts here, but it's more for Kevin Holland. There are certain prerequisites that are needing to be met before he starts to feel confident, starts to feel comfortable, and starts to look good. Santiago Ponzinibbio gave him almost all of those prerequisites. And what that was Kevin Holland was able to fight at his range. So there was a range question that didn't need to be altered or added to for Kevin Holland. Santiago Ponzinibbio wasn't putting strings of opportunities together, strings of shots together. And so Kevin Holland didn't need to worry about combinations coming or whatever. Kevin Holland also didn't need to worry so much about one hitter quitter power. We know that Santiago hits hard and we know that he could do the cracking, but it's not deathly scary power. And the other was pace. If you put a pace on Kevin Holland, he can sometimes wane, he can sometimes wear underneath that pressure. Ponzinibbio did not put a pace on
Not
Kevin.
that guy.
So Holland was able to just chip away, use his range, use his length, do the talking, and look great. You know, at no point did he look in danger. At no point did he look like he was suffering or didn't look like he was being forced out of any form of gears that you wouldn't expect him to be. And then the stoppage was a good one. I have no problem with it. I just wrote a little question mark next to the stoppage here so we could discuss it. I mean, Santiago wasn't face down, but he was in a turtle position with his forehead on the mat.
Down.
Right. And
it felt like his forehead stopped him from being
very
all
possible,
the way down.
Very possible. But yeah, there was a couple of coffin nails. And I think even Kevin Holland sort of looked to be like, do I need to do more?
Right.
And then there was a, no, thanks. We're good here. I'm happy to stop it. Right. And so we got the stoppage fine. No problem. Somebody said it was on the preview show, maybe something, I can't remember, where we said, oh, you know, sometimes we forget that Ponzinibbio was knocking on the door of being a title contender in this division. And there did seem to be something that happened with Ponzinibbio's right leg in the second round. Not sure what happened, but Holland checked on him and he said, are you okay? And
he slipped in the center on the giant monster can. Right. Kind of had a stumble, and Holland was like,
you all right? Yeah. And like, I don't know whether that's a knee thing again. I don't know what that is, but immediately he looked a little unsure on his feet.
And when he went to the corner, Katel Kubis was like, yeah, I don't want to hear about the knee. Don't be rubbing your leg.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't be surprised if there's an MCL or a PCL or something.
Whatever. Yeah. But look, for Kevin Holland, when you were like, I knew that the question was going to come of who next. I don't fucking know, like, because what do you do? Do you know what I mean? Like, what do you do? Do you you just throw him to Jeff Neal? You know, like I've thought about that.
They've fought before.
But that's the thing.
Kevin Holland has a win. Jeff Neal may want to get that back.
Maybe. Do you allow Sean Brady to turn around against a Kevin Holland and, you know, have an opportunity to push a pace and do the grappling things and be the antidote to the things that Kevin Holland doesn't want? But I don't know what you do with him. Like, I don't know what you do with him. I really don't.
So, prefaced as always with health, right? Because it seemed, as I said on Saturday, as I said here, it seemed like he wasn't throwing the right hand very much at all, except in those, like, this is where I absolutely have to throw it moments. So we'll see if the hand is jacked up. And if it is, he's going to need a larger window, a longer window to recover before he returns. As always, there is the Neil Magny option of veteran guy. Let's see you in there with somebody that will push a pace, that will stick a jab in your face. Michael Chiesa was supposed to be on this card. Li Jingliang got hurt, wasn't able to go. I wouldn't mind that. A guy that can grapple, a guy that can wrestle, a guy that'll be like, hey man, Let's see if you fix that wrestling yet. And if you want to get like real, get me excited from a like, ooh, I would like to see this. Can I interest you in a Jack Della Maddalena?
Yes.
Because here's the thing, right? Kevin Holland is going to do Kevin Holland things. And the fella from Perth is going to be like, yeah, we don't do any of this here. Have you not watched what I do? I don't do this. I settle things in the first round. So you can have at it. Do what you would like. But I will be in your face from second one. And I'm coming. And Jack Della Maddalena doesn't have a fight yet.
Yeah, I like that. Let's do that.
Grand. We move to the first fight of the main card, and I'm actually going to tie this together with the first fight of the night. So, Christian Rodriguez goes out and defeats Raul Rosas Jr. by unanimous decision. First fight of the night, Sam Hughes defeats Jacqueline Amarim by unanimous decision. In each fight, the vanquished fighter dominates the first round with their grappling, goes out, does the good grappling things. Amarim nearly finished Sam Hughes. She has to tough out a couple of spots, fights hands really well, defends really well, gets herself to the second round, comes out and is like, oh, she is exhausted. She is just donezo. Same thing. Second round, Christian Rodriguez walks out. Raul Rojas Jr. tries to take him down. And Christian Rodriguez is like, oh, this is a terrible shot. I'm just going to sprawl this out. And now I'm going to grapple. In each instance, the more experienced UFC fighter got the victory, weathered the tough bits, and was like, oh, you're tired. I see you're not used to this yet. And I think for me, that's just the takeaway. That's the learning experience. As we talked about on the preview show with the Rodriguez Rosas Jr. fight, if it's anybody else, we're talking about Christian Rodriguez going in. And I think we all got a little bit caught up in the stardust of Raul Rojas Jr. and the potential. And he showed on Saturday that there's just a bunch of holes still. There's just, as you guys talked about on Speaker's Corner, young kids need time. And when you're not doing the fight on the regional circuit, and to me, it's a double edge, right? Because we saw Jacqueline Amarim fight on the regional circuit and win some fights and win an LFA belt. But she was also just dominating people. Hadn't been out of the first round and looked great for those 5 minutes that we know she has. Apparently, she's got that Derek Brunson gas tank where after 5 minutes, we're just like, this thing's empty. I don't know what to do now. I think both of them can certainly rebound. There's only up from here. And I hope for each of them that they don't suddenly get the like, overrated hype train derailed. Because Raul Rojas is 18 years old. Part of the reason I came into this saying he's the most fascinating fighter on the roster to me is because he's 18 years old. And there's so much room to grow. He's got some tough decisions that he's going to have to make here in the next couple of fights if he really wants to max this out and grow and be as good as he can be. But it's not the end of the world. And for the two people that got their hand raised, for Christian Rodriguez and for Sam Hughes, these are great wins. Just in terms of showing that patience, poise, calmness, sound defensive skills, and then being like, cool, watch this. This is what I've learned having been through it. What were your thoughts?
So obviously I didn't watch Rodriguez Rojas Jr. because BT Sport screwed me, but I did watch Hughes and Amarim. And the first round from Amarim, you're right, was fantastic. She looked great. She did the grappling things, and obviously Sam Hughes could do some of the grappling things.
Can you explain to me how she doesn't finish those chokes? Because I'm watching it and I'm like, this feels like just a mechanics thing.
Yeah.
This feels like just a technique thing.
I think the technique was fine. I just think that Sam Hughes gutted it out, put her chin in the right place, and was able to withstand the pressure and the pain, and then was able to strip grips. Like, she did a good job of sort of just enough moving her center line off where the choke sort of is still a choke, but it's also a little bit of a crank, and there's pain, and there's a jaw, and there's a whatever, more than it was a straight dead to rights, chest to back, we're choking, you're going to sleep thing. Hughes did enough where she was consistently in transit, and rather than settling in a position where she was then trying to fight hands, she was constantly rolling, constantly moving, constantly looking to fight hands, and then eventually obviously managed to escape her way out. But if I'm Amarim, I also wonder whether there's an element where everyone that's been put in front of her that gets put in some similar situation taps or
takes
goes
the exit. Yeah.
right. And Sam Hughes is just like, yeah, that's fun. We don't do that over here. And then Amarim, I wonder, is like, oh fuck, well, and I think there's a part of it that's gas tank, but in the second, she's like, I'm gonna pull guard. Like, what?
Yeah.
What do you mean? You're gonna pull guard?
Yeah, there's certainly a deficiency of skill as well. Like, and this is one of the things we talked about on the preview show of like, I just don't know if these, IBJJF standouts can come in and be standouts anymore without having built up all of the skill set.
Yeah. I think the answer is no. Like, we talk about and have talked about, and Shawnee's talked about how jiu-jitsu is going to return, and jiu-jitsu is obviously vastly important when you're at a level of like Alexander Volkanovski and Islam Makhachev and Arman Tsarukyan and all these fighters that we talked about, Leon Edwards, etc. Jiu-jitsu is fantastically useful when there is a specific use for it. Right. And that specific use isn't purely 15 minutes of fighting. Right. MMA has gone way too far at this point. That jiu-jitsu can be used in transitions. It can be used to help you get up. It can be used to help take people down. It can be used to allow you to help control people, and etc. But pulling guard in MMA in 2023 is not a thing.
Right. We won't do names because we will just move forward because we're already $1:15 in, and we want to get through the rest of this card. So the prelims close with Kelvin Gastelum getting a unanimous decision win over Chris Curtis in a fight that I think is another one of those ones that when we look at it down the road, we need to remember that it was a close competitive fight. What were your thoughts here? Because I saw a lot of Kelvin Gastelum back, and I was like, is he though? Or can we see a little more? Like, I want to see at least one more before I'm like, oh, KG back. Because this didn't feel like KG's back. This felt like if you went 29-28 the other way, I would have been perfectly okay with it.
So I think to steelman the argument of people online, when Kelvin Gastelum is moving forward and when he's moving his head and slipping shots and coming inside and finding angles and landing shots, he looks really, really good. He looks really, really good. The low kicks he was landing on Chris Curtis were phenomenal. They were causing Chris Curtis to react in such a way. And I think there's also a part where he is sort of the antithesis of Jorge Masvidal, right? Where he actually does have all of the skills. He can do the grappling. He can do the straight wrestling. He can do the cage wrestling. He can do the boxing toe for toe. He can do some of the kickboxing things. And then he just doesn't.
So, and I want to make this clear. I'm not saying this in a like derogatory way of what I'm going to say. I think there's a little bit of Kelvin Gastelum is one of those guys that a whole lot of people wish better for. A whole lot of people root for him to succeed because his story on The Ultimate Fighter of being the last guy picked or the last guy picked and then going on and winning and then having the issues at welterweight where he shows some good flashes, but he can't get that settled. And he's sort of the banished guy and he goes up to middleweight and he's had some ups and downs, but he's had that fight with Izzy. I think there are people that just sit and still root for Kelvin Gastelum to be the fighter that we all know he can be. As you're saying, we've seen all the skills and we want it to be this consistent, better, stay the guy we saw in the first round forever. And he just hasn't been able to do that yet.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think a lot of it just comes from he's in the wrong weight class, has been in the wrong weight class for most of his career, can't seem to get a diet down, can't seem to get a camp together where he's not injured or he's whatever. And look, you don't need to come to me about fuck weight cutting, but I think there's a difference between weight cutting and there's a difference between weight management, right? And for Kelvin Gastelum,
the ironic thing of it is that for a very long time, he was the guy, and I've got the old quotes, I've probably got the old recordings still, that would say the difference between me at welterweight and me at middleweight is I could be world champion at welterweight.
Right.
And he's right. He's right.
Sure.
He maybe is past that mark now because he's 31 in years and all of these things. But in that window where he couldn't get that 170 down regularly, he had the chance to be a world champion.
Yeah, he was really good and still is really good. Like, genuinely is really, really good. Like, you watch him against Chris Curtis, and Chris Curtis had no fucking clue what to do with him in those first 5 minutes. It was just like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to strap in and I'm going to try not to get knocked out, and I'm going to hope that something changes in the second round. And thankfully, something did change, and Chris Curtis worked his way into the fight. But for those first 5 minutes, Chris Curtis was like, what did I sign for? Because it wasn't this. Like, this
I didn't expect this guy.
No. And yeah, it's such a, I think it's not even necessarily that people are rooting for Kelvin Gastelum. They just see wasted skills. They see wasted potential, and they're like, but why? Like, because you've got so many fighters who are the opposite, right? They are a likable character. They work so hard, but they just don't have the skill set, right? They just don't have it. And that's fine, right? That's fine. That's how life works. But there's also a portion where you've got this kid, this guy, who if he just managed for 5 years, 6 years, 8 years of his life to not eat cheeseburgers and just eat chicken and rice and broccoli and whatever it is he needs to eat to get his weight in a position where he can contend, he could have been one of the best in the world. And that is a really, really sour thing to swallow in MMA.
Absolutely. Is there a name?
So I know I said it earlier, but I mean, maybe I didn't say it earlier. You said it earlier. The guy I would like is Dricus du Plessis.
Fair.
Give Kelvin Gastelum Dricus du Plessis, and if he goes out and staunches Kelvin Gastelum, all right, fine. Give him a whoever. But like, Kelvin Gastelum will be on Dricus du Plessis, and Kelvin Gastelum, as much as he may slow down or whatever, there are
at least,
he can still push a pace, you know? And so if you want to do a fight night 5 rounds just to test du Plessis' cardio and everything else, I'm in. Sign me up. Let's do it.
That's a perfect guy that can headline against du Plessis because he is the name that can carry that. If you're not going to do that, we were supposed to get Nasruddin Imavov earlier this year. I would welcome that. If you wanted to do Sean Strickland, I'd be fine with that. There's some options. The interesting thing about middleweight is that as shallow and weird and ugly as it is at times, there's also a whole bunch of like, yeah, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Let's go. I'll see it. I'll watch it. It'll be all right. Luana Pinheiro gets a split decision win over Michelle Waterson Gomez. Felt a little bit like a damage over volume kind of fight. Felt a little like a Michelle Waterson Gomez is the same fighter she's always been, and there's sort of a limitation to that. Superior athlete ultimately gets the win. It also wasn't one of those fights where I was like, oh, Lou Pinheiro. I came away from it like, all right, this is where she sits. Here's where we're at. Your thoughts?
Maybe. I think the problem with Michelle Waterson is she's actually a really difficult test. And she's a really difficult test because there's a ton of dexterity in her kicking game. There's a ton of variety in her kicking game, but she never commits to anything. But the problem is that she has so much in her arsenal where it's a one shot here, one shot there, one shot here, one shot there.
Yes.
That you can't ever get into a rhythm of, okay, she's consistently throwing these combinations or this thing or whatever, and I'm going to work around it. It's she's throwing once in a blue moon, and when she does throw, it's a teep to my chest, and I find myself sat down for 2 seconds, and then I pop back up, and it's that Lu Pinheiro has to take all of the risks to get inside.
Right.
And then when she gets inside, she looks great, right? She's hammering shots in. She's doing the combination thing. She's fighting how she's supposed to fight. But it comes with its own risk, because the risk is at any point, Waterson might wrap a shin around your head, and then you're wondering what's going on as the referee steps over you.
Right.
But it's one of those where Waterson is a test, but not really. You know, like she's a test more of patience and of durability and of stick-to-itness to a game plan than she is of a let's go in and here's an elite fighter.
It's the entrance exam.
Bones on.
You got to pass this one to get into the school. Now that you're in the school, there's a bunch of other tough tests.
Like, I wouldn't be shocked, right, if Luana Pinheiro goes out and looks really good against a fighter that will come forward, look to land shots, look to be available, look to actually win fights. Because this is and I don't mean that as nastily as it sounds, but it's
I know what you mean.
It feels like Waterson is going in with the idea of, I'm going to do everything in my power to make this a tough fight for this opponent, and I'm not going to lose. And then, not lose. I mean, she loses, but you know what I mean? She's not going out. She's not getting blown out of the water. She's going to make this a tough, competitive fight with the skill sets and the tools that she has. I just don't see,
So I think there are some options, and it depends how far you want to go in terms of elevating Luana Pinheiro.
Yeah.
Because if you want to do the big elevation, you see what Yan Xiaonan's up to. Yeah. And you go, let's just see. In the same vein, you can call Marina Rodriguez and be like, hey, what are you up to? Brazil versus Brazil. Now she's booked for May, but so be it.
So is Yan Xiaonan.
Oh, all right. And so then you could also, if you want to stay in the same range, you could do Brazil versus Brazil, Amanda Ribas. Because Amanda Ribas will come forward and happily exchange and get into things and can do some grappling when they get inside.
May I offer you Tisha Torres?
Pregnant, not fighting.
May I not offer you Tisha Torres?
With child. Congrats to TT and Rocky.
Yeah. I mean, the other, you want to keep it in the same wheelhouse, is you just do Cynthia Calvillo.
All right. So let's move to that fight.
Yeah.
Lupe Godinez, Cynthia Calvillo. Godinez gets a split decision win. I think it sort of showed. And she loved every minute of that fight. She talked about it afterwards with Joe Rogan. She talked about it in the back. Let me get into these fist fights. I love these brawls. I love these whatevers. I watched it and was like, man, that's such a waste. You're better than this. You let Cynthia Calvillo jab you up. And Cynthia Calvillo isn't a good striker. And she jabbed you up. And so, yeah, I would watch Luana Pinheiro against either of those women happily.
I scored the fight for Calvillo.
I don't have issue with that.
I thought she did the better work with her straight shots. I thought she landed the more damaging shots. I thought she landed, I don't know, this doesn't matter with the scoring criteria, but just to me, like, I was impressed with Calvillo's diversity. She mixed the fight up. She took her down. She landed some stuff on the bottom, not a lot, but some stuff on the feet. She was trying to punish her at every moment. And Lupe Godinez, who's, got this good grappling background, didn't shoot a takedown once. What are we doing?
I don't get it.
What are we doing?
I don't get it.
What are we doing? Like, Cynthia
the whole family wrestles. The whole family wrestles. The sisters wrestled down the road from me, or did. Why aren't we wrestling? You grappled with Jessica Panay in your debut. You were like, cool, I'm going to grapple with this girl. You won the LFA title grappling with Vanessa Demopoulos. What are we doing? Where'd it go? You're big and strong and powerful.
Yeah. This is the same thing to me as who did we talk about from a tactical battle? And I said was poor earlier. Oh, Gilbert Burns. Like,
Yeah.
if I can
Scoop her up and put her on her head.
Very, very different things, right? Sure. And
Yes.
Lupe Godinez didn't look in vast danger when Calvillo was looking to pass or do any of the jiu-jitsu type things. But why are we even allowing this to be a thing? You know, like the shot comes, sprawl that shit out, go to a front headlock, work your way from there, and we've said this so many times, I sound like a fucking broken record. But if Cynthia Calvillo knows, bearing in mind one of the shortest fighters on the roster with the shortest reach on the roster, if she knows all I have to do is land shots because this woman is never going to try and take me down, anyone can look just fine in boxing exchanges.
And then it's just a matter of perception.
It's just a matter of how do I make sure my head's not on the center line for these big loopy, pardon the pun, hooks and everything else.
Yeah.
And it's like, it was just a really, really terrible, terrible tactical performance from Lupe Godinez.
I agree. We jumped around a little bit, so we'll go back to middleweight. Joe Pyfer gets a first round technical knockout win over Gerald Meerschaert. Go. You're shaking your head. Tell me about it.
Joe Pyfer's not the truth, guys. I'm here to tell you. He's not the guy. He's not the guy. He's really not. Like, look, Gerald Meerschaert is an interesting test in specific realms, right?
Yes.
If the fight got to the ground, he is really, really good there. He's got some interesting looks. He's got some interesting things. But the problem I had with Joe Pyfer is Gerald Meerschaert is not a man that you are super nervous of his output on the feet. He's not a volume guy. He's not a massive hit guy. He's a guy that's looking to use his striking to get to grappling and fight from there. Joe Pyfer just stood there, did nothing, waited for the perfect moment to land a shot, landed a shot, was like, oh, I can hit this old dude. Cool. And then just ran over and hit him again. And I'm like, no, dude, this is not the one. This should have been done in a minute. Like, this was, I don't know what this was.
This could have been Chimaev Meerschaert. 17 seconds,
a million
march across the cage, kablamo.
100%. And it was really.
Yep. Yeah. I agree. I'm going to be interested to see who Joe Pyfer gets next, because listen, Joe Pyfer is getting a push. Joe Pyfer is getting opportunities, right? Joe Pyfer was a thing last fall. He's now had 2 favorable matchups, Alan Amedovski and now Gerald Meerschaert. I'm curious to see what's next. And I'm curious to see if his corner, if his team, John Marquez, Daniel Gracie, that crew, Jonathan Webb, can get in his ear, Sean Brady, and be like, yo, man, you don't have to look for the perfect shot. You're big and strong and powerful, and you look like a ton of bricks. Go out there and just throw some stuff. He needs the Trevor Whitman speech. Hey, man, 70%. Just then kablam. Or hit kablam. Do more.
The speech before then. The speech before then is, you have arms for a reason, right? That's the speech. Like, forget the take 70% off, because there was a couple of shots in there where he just touched him, and that was great. That's fine. But the just touching him thing is exactly the fucking thing he needs to be doing. It's right. Gerald Meerschaert, lads.
Yeah.
It's not.
Just go out there and put it on him.
Yeah. I have some names.
Okay.
So Gerald Meerschaert is wherever, right? Can I interest you? I have 3 interests. One is like, if he's getting the push from the UFC, that's the name, and then others. So if he's going to get the push from the UFC, may I interest you in Andre Muniz?
Absolutely.
If not, could we do Joaquin Buckley?
Yep.
Because Joaquin Buckley will go out and is hittable, but will certainly not shy away from doing the hitting things. If not, and you want him to get tested, may I interest you in Gregory Rodriguez?
Oh, I would do RoboCop. I would certainly do. Yep. I would certainly do RoboCop. I like that. I like that shout. Joaquin Buckley, by the way, another guy that falls into the Kelvin Gastelum category of should be a welterweight.
But is way more fucking shredded.
Well, but is just like jacked up and is like, nah, I'm gonna keep these He-Man muscles and fight it. Be a 5'8" middleweight. Yeah, I would happily do RoboCop coming off a loss. Yep, that would work. Do you know what I would like? And this is a thing that I don't normally do because prospect. What face are you making?
Go on, say it.
Christian Leroy Duncan.
Oh, that's not close at all. Like,
I agree, but I'm here to try to get Christian Leroy Duncan over.
I hear that.
He's ready to go. Didn't fight very much. Right?
Sure.
Dushko Todorovic blows out his knee. He's ready to go. You want to do something quick turnaround. Joe P wants to keep fighting.
No. And
I would, to be clear, I would prefer Andre Muniz. I would even do Nasruddin Imavov as a like, you want to see about this guy? It's middleweight. Let's just see. I would do Chris Curtis for a timeline thing.
God, no.
And look, Chris Curtis should very well beat the hell out of Joe Pyfer. But let's see.
Look, I think that's too soon for all of these. I don't think you jump from Gerald Meerschaert to fucking Nasruddin Imavov or Chris Curtis, frankly. I don't think you do that in a month of Sundays. Regardless of what level
in
of
a month of Sundays. I like that.
It's a very British. It's a very
It
British.
is.
You're welcome.
I continue to integrate some of these into my daily vocabulary.
As you should. I used
poorly the other day.
Excellent. I don't know. I think the Christian Leroy Duncan one I don't like simply because middleweight is so thin as it is. Even if Joe Pyfer isn't the guy,
give him a chance to be that. Give him a chance to maybe figure it out.
Right. Because if you do Christian Leroy Duncan and Leroy Duncan just fucking destroys him, well, that's a turnaround of 2-3 years, whatever it is, and by that time the chance might have gone. So
fair enough.
Do that immediately. But yes, I like the RoboCop one.
I'll take it. I'll take that. Absolutely. Ignacio Bahamondes gets a unanimous decision win over Trey Ogden. For me, not a lot to talk about, not a lot to take away here. It's a good performance. Trey Ogden just isn't this level. And I don't say that disparagingly. I don't say that dismissively. It's just he's not this level.
Bahamondes could have fought that fight for another 19 years. Like, it was just, you're at my range. You're doing absolutely nothing to stop me fighting at my range.
Yes.
This is a sparring match. No problem.
I would like to see him tested now. That's 3 straight wins. He's proven that at that bottom tier, lowest tier of the division, right? They gave him the John McDessie test right out of the gate, and he failed because he didn't use his length. He didn't use all of those things, and McDessie was able to get to him and beat him. He needs that kind of fight now. He needs that one next.
I have a name.
Okay.
May I interest you in Joel Alvarez?
Oh, Jesus. I mean, that's a step. That is a big old step.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, sure.
Let's do it.
Sure.
Like
2 big long dudes.
2 big long
things.
One dude does grappling things. One dude does spinny wheel kick things. Let's see.
All right, I'm in. I was going to go like middle pack veteran. And you were just like, nah, give me the guy that was on the fringes of the top 15.
Yeah,
I'll take it.
Yeah, let's see.
Featherweight fight. Steve Garcia comes back from the Shadow Realm to defeat Shailan Nerdembeki with a beautiful set of body work. Little kick to the midsection, and then one more for you. I'm still not sold here in any way, shape, or form. And it's not because I lost on Nerdembeki as a pick and a play and all of those things. It's because Steve Garcia got dispatched to the ancestral plane, spoke with the elders, and was like, oh, I guess I'm coming back. All right, I'm coming back. And then Shailan somehow was just exhausted. when you get your jaw twisted like that, seemingly every fight, win or lose, save for maybe the Chase Hooper fight. I'm not trying to be a hater, Steve Garcia, but I just can't.
So, I mean, he's absolutely not UFC level. And there's a couple of names I have.
Okay.
Where you want to go.
Okay.
I think you can do, if you want to, you can do an Andre Fili type, right? Where you're like, here's a guy who's perennially a 50-50 fighter, 500 fighter, whatever it is. And Andre Fili just goes in and trucks him.
Yeah.
But then maybe not, right? Like
entirely possible, right? Andre Fili is that coin flip fighter. The
other one is if you want to go in and you want to just have him ran over, you give him to Damon Jackson. The other name I offer now, I think this will never happen. I don't. But if you wanted to, you give him Nathaniel Wood, and Nathaniel Wood just does things to him. Because look, my argument for Nathaniel Wood is obviously Nathaniel Wood is looking up the division. There is very potentially a Lerone Murphy fight in July if they want to run that back. There's obviously a lot of heat there, whatever. If you want to do that, fine. But if you also want to see Nathaniel Wood go in against a guy that's a bit bigger at 145,
right,
and do how does the size meet up?
Right. Steve Garcia, good reach, good length, big guy for the division, certainly.
So I will concede happily that the skill set is not the same. One question we have for Nathaniel Wood at 145 is what happens when there's a big size difference. Right. Jordan wasn't huge, and Charles Rosa wasn't anywhere near huge for 145. Lerone Murphy will be big, so if you want to kill two birds with one stone, I got no problem with that. Right. I'm just offering Steve Garcia if you would like to put Nathaniel Wood in a good position on a July card, get him a win,
test it, and then,
Steve Garcia is the name.
I like that. I'm okay with that. That's it for UFC 287 because we already spoke about Sam Hughes getting a win over Jacqueline Amarim. It brings us forward to this weekend, the return of Max Holloway, the return of Arnold Allen. They get 5 rounds in Kansas City, Missouri. Also on the card, Edson Barbosa, Billy Quarantillo, Pedro Munoz, Chris Garcia, Brandon Royval, Matthias Nicolau. Can I interest you in that one? What else is on here? I also don't mind Jillian Robertson and Piero Rodriguez. I'm interested in that one. And then some other names that are just here that I'll be interested to see because I'm a lunatic that wants to see Daniel Zellhuber off his first loss and Gaston Boilanos getting signed to the UFC for reasons that I still don't understand, but he's entertaining and fun. And the crazy man E1 Kutila was on this card. So fighting Tanner Boser in his light heavyweight debut for some Canadian content, as we have here in this country, where Canadians have to be represented at a certain amount of time. I am getting the Harry Powell swipe. So we will move forward. We will move out of here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Love you. We appreciate you. Check out the boys. Check out the Patreon. Follow everybody on Twitter. Thank you again. For Harry, I am Spencer. Good night and God bless.